coming in. This is about the extradition of Nirav Modi, and Nirav's extradition stays as his appeal has been rejected by the UK court. That's the big news that we're getting right now. This is an extradition that the Indian agencies have relentlessly pursued. Sanjay Suri with us on the broadcast. Sanjay, give us more perspective.
Well, this is, of course, very significant and a very big victory for the Indian authorities, for the CBI and the Enforcement Directorate. They had jointly filed this case against Nirav Modi. So we have a word that the appeal has been dismissed. We are waiting for the details and the grounds for the dismissal. We do, of course, need to remind ourselves that this appeal was heard on the sole ground of his mental health conditions and Nirav Modi's expressed concern that he could not be looked after adequately in India, that the jail conditions were not right, the political conditions are not conducive, and that he would not get a fair trial. And therefore, the sole ground was this issue of mental health and whether he can be looked after, and the human rights issues attendant on this. Now, this appeal has been dismissed. This came after two psychiatrists had testified in court, one for the government, one against. The one for Nirav Modi had argued that he's suffering from moderate to severe depression, but a little short of severe. He described it as moderate. It was graded a little carefully. The Oxford professor who testified for the CBI and for the government side said that this was just a mild depression and no ground, and therefore that argument was upheld by the court. The question now is, having won the extradition case, whether India has also won the extradition, because one doesn't follow. We would expect it to, but we learned in the Vijay Mallya case that that may not necessarily follow. Mallya applied for asylum. He appealed for clemency on those grounds. And Nirav Modi has done the same. So there is this parallel track that can short circuit and trip up the entire extradition process. That second track is in the shadows. It is all a very opaque track. There is no public hearing. There is not even an official word from the government whether someone has applied for asylum at all. So
Absolutely.
We have to see what happens on that track, and whether that is an appeal of Nirav Modi that has also been dismissed. We would need both appeals to be dismissed for Nirav Modi actually to be extradited to India.
All right. And Sanjay, this is the Westminster Court that we're talking about?
No, this is the High Court here, the Royal Court of Justice in London.
Okay.
This is where the High Court is lodged, and this is where the appeal was heard. The Westminster Court had ordered extradition. Nirav Modi appealed against it. That appeal was dismissed on all grounds, it was except that of his mental health.
All right. So,
and it was upheld by the High Court here in appeal that the Westminster Court was right in finding there's a prima facie case.
All right. So that's an important bit that Sanjay is pointing out, that the Westminster Court had already given an order. This is the High Court in UK that has given an order. So it's a very, very significant order that has come in. Sanjay was also pointing out how there's a parallel executive/political procedure that continues to go on about applying for an asylum and trying to get some kind of stay in UK to aid the agencies here in India. Ashish Maharshi is also joining us on the broadcast. Ashish, how significant is this order? More importantly, the central agencies have been pursuing this case very, very relentlessly and vociferously, demanding that this person should be extradited. How is today's order a big thumbs up for all the agencies who have been working towards this very critical, complicated process of extradition from UK?
We all know that getting somebody from the United Kingdom is a Herculean task. We've already seen one victory yesterday in the case of Sanjay Bhandari, and now we are seeing another victory in the case of Nirav Modi. Now, Nirav Modi's case, we all know that he lost in the Westminster Court. He gave various arguments in the past, saying that the Indian prison conditions are not good. And various other arguments that he had given about he's been politically targeted, and various other arguments that were given. But finally, if you see, at least in this case, where depression was the only issue that was being highlighted by the court, in the court by Nirav Modi's lawyer. And in fact, if you remember, in the court also there were at least, the two psychiatric experts came over and they gave a statement that, that there is depression and there are suicidal thoughts also that are coming into his mind. But ultimately, it seems that the court understood that this is minor depression. There could be some sort of suicidal thoughts as well. But ultimately, since his appeal is, he is lost, the only option that is left is that he can file an application in the Supreme Court there, and then that is also going to be very tough because usually the Supreme Court does not entertain applications like this.
Yeah.
But here, after the Westminster Court gave an approval of his extradition, he's losing the battle in the High Court as well. So it seems to be that bringing him to India is not very far off. But at the same time, we all know that in the case of Vijay Mallya as well, he lost. His application was not entertained in the Supreme Court. He lost in High Court as well. And ultimately, what has happened, there is no official word whether he's on asylum in United Kingdom, on what basis he is staying with. So we don't know. So obviously, it's a big victory for the Indian organizations, especially agencies like CBI and ED. But ultimately, if we are not able to get somebody physically back into India, then the victory actually does not matter too much. So here, let's see if, though he's lost his appeal, whether Indian agencies are able to get him physically from the United Kingdom or not. That is going to be something really interesting to see in days to come.
Sanjay, you spoke about the parallel process of asylum, which is an opaque process, and we don't get to know what exactly is happening, what are the bases, because it's a quasi-political process and also an executive process where the establishment of the day has the final call on these matters. But talking from the point of view of judiciary and the courts, this is the High Court after the Westminster Court. What are the legal options in judiciary that lie for Nirav Modi at this point in time?
Well, in the first instance, as Ashish was pointing out, he will certainly seek to approach the Supreme Court, but that is not a very promising path for him at all. For that, the first step would have to be for the appeals court here to give him permission to appeal. That permission in a case like this is usually denied because the Supreme Court here, unlike the Supreme Court in India, only takes up issues of cases that relate to public policy. This does not appear to be the case here. Then he has the option of applying to the European Court of Human Rights. That certainly is also a process that could gain him some time. Then eventually the case goes back to the Home Secretary, and there would be a further case for him to apply to the Home Secretary, which is to the British government really, that his mental health is not good, that he has health issues, and on those grounds also he will seek to try and block the extradition. And that also we have to consider. All these steps will be considered and could be potentially effective for him if he were to have failed on the parallel track of asylum. If that appeal has been rejected, and the asylum track again is where the Home Office takes a decision, but he can appeal, and that is an appeal process held in camera. If he has lost that case, and then if he loses all these steps in the extradition process, only then can he be physically extradited to India.
All right. Thank you, Sanjay, for getting us all those details. My colleague Ashish Mahershi also tracking that big story. It's a huge order from the UK High Court after the Westminster Court giving a go-ahead for the extradition process. We pointed out the complications that still lie in the way for an eventual actual extradition to happen to India. We'll continue